that really, made me know that there is a higher power and a universal consciousness, and that I am divinely guided and supported in everything I do, and to trust that everything is happening in divine timing.
Today's episode is a very special one as we talk about breaking the myths about conceiving naturally, secondary infertility, dealing with PCOS and PCOD, and a lot more. Welcome to Coaches on the Couch, the place where experts share their journey to inspire you to take action. My name is Pratishtha Bhalla and I am your host for the show. Today we have with us the wonderful Ashley, a mother of 3 beautiful kids and a holistic fertility coach from Canada. She helps women struggling with infertility to connect mind, body, and spirit so that they can conceive naturally and with ease. Join us as we talk about her struggle and her own fertility issues that she overcame by incorporating yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda in her life. Welcome, Ashley, to this podcast and this videocast. And the stage is all yours. Please share with us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to share my story and inspire hope for those who are struggling to conceive at this present time, and to know that there are so many things that are within your control that you can do for yourself every single day to help achieve those baby dreams.
Thank you, Ashley, for that introduction. Ashley, let's start with the main story. You mentioned about your own struggle with fertility, and now you are a mother of 3 beautiful kids. Please share your journey with us.
Sure, I would love to. So I was in my 20s when I wanted to start my family, and I didn't think there would be any problem. I thought it would happen quickly, and it didn't. That was not the case. And I was really in denial and thought, I'm young and I'm healthy and I just need to keep trying. It's going to happen. And finally, I went to the doctor and was referred to a fertility clinic. And everywhere is different, but in Canada, if you're under 35, you need to be trying for more than a year to be seen by a clinic. And if you're 35 or older, you need to be trying for 6 months. So since I was under 35, and I had been trying for probably 18 months before I finally went to the fertility clinic, because I knew that once I did, this was going to end in happiness or heartbreak, or so I thought. And I thought that was my only option. If I didn't do it this way, I was not going to be able to have kids. So I was eventually blessed with beautiful twins, and I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, that was not a road I would ever go down again. I did not want to use a fertility clinic again because I did not enjoy the way the side effects affected my mind and body. And I just knew that I didn't want to do that and put myself through that again. And so many years later, after yoga and meditation and Ayurveda and a holistic way of being and living, I was able to come back into balance and alignment and was able to conceive naturally in under 6 months. So it had taken me years the first time around, and it only took me months, and no side effects, just me getting into my mind, body, and spirit, and having that connection and choosing to live my life in a holistic way.
Well, that's beautiful. You mentioned that there were a lot of side effects when you were going through the fertility clinic. A lot of people are not aware of those side effects. So, could you share us more about what those side effects can be if somebody is going through that fertility clinic?
For me personally, I mean, obviously taking medication is going to affect everybody differently. and whether they have any pre-existing conditions, it's going to affect them differently. But it felt like an outer body experience to me. You know, everything was amplified, all these extra hormones, you know, I wasn't used to, and so emotional and just so not myself. And I didn't enjoy feeling like that, you know? I was just like, I'm only doing this until I don't have to do it anymore. And it really has made me be so conscious and aware of what I do put into my mind and body because of how I felt, because I didn't enjoy that. And it's like, I don't want to ever feel like that again. And I'm just that present and aware of how I live my life and what I put into my system. I am grateful for the experience, but at the same time, that route was one and done for me. And I found a better path. And if I was ever in those shoes again and wanted to have more children, you know, I know which way I would choose 100% every time.
You mentioned that you chose the lifestyle of yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda. So, how did that journey begin?
For me, it began when my twins got a little bit older, and initially it was just going to a karma class just once a week. And I was so drawn to yoga and I always wanted more, and I didn't understand the energetics behind it, but that's what always was drawing me back. Was I always felt better every time I stepped off my yoga mat. I always felt lighter, freer, you know, more energy, revitalized. And the more I began to study it and the deeper I went within it and within myself as well, you know, everything I learned on the mat, I took off the mat and applied it into my life. And it was just a huge transformation for me and something I do and incorporate daily in my life because it literally brought life into my life. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I know if I hadn't gone down that path, that probably would not be the case. And it was a huge awakening, enlightening moment for me of how much the first time around I gave my power away to the medical system and just relied solely on them and thought if they can't help me, then no one can. And realizing that I had so much power and there were so many things that I could do for myself every single day to feel my best and to show up as my best and to be a better mother to my twins already because of it.
Yeah, Ashley, you mentioned something very important here about giving the powers to medical system and believing that whatever they are saying is the ultimate truth. So from there you shifted on to take that power to yourself. So well, what happened here? How did you take that power back? What was the first step?
The first step for me was really and truly stop living a yang style of life, which is busy and hustle, which is exactly the opposite of what you need when you're trying to conceive, because it is very stressful and it is impacting your nervous system. So I began, and part of my training was doing yin yoga, restorative yoga, yoga nidra, which is a yogic sleep meditation, and finding all of these ways in which my nervous system came out of fight or flight mode and into rest and digest mode, and I was able to reset myself over and over again. And the more I did that, the more aware I became of when my mind was racing, when thoughts weren't serving me, and I just became that much more conscious and aware of the entire way I live my life. And it was like there were so many things that I needed to let go of and release. And I didn't know how to before, and I didn't have a lot of peace with things in the past. And I truly found that peace, and that's what it gave me.
Ashley, when you said meditation, yoga nidra, yoga, a lot of people find it difficult to meditate. So how does one start with meditation?
Definitely. This is something I speak to often because I feel like there's a big misconception of what it needs to feel like and look like. And I promise that there is a form of meditation for everyone. But if the expectation is to sit down and empty the mind of thoughts, that's not truly what meditation is. It's being conscious and aware of your thoughts and observing your thoughts and allowing them to float through your consciousness without being attached to them. So, for many people, though, to sit down, that's not the place to start. They may need a walking meditation where it's mindful and present and aware without listening to music, without a podcast playing. They are in the moment. So for some people, that might be a great place to start. And yoga nidra is equivalent to yogic sleep, which is also a great place to start because you cannot do it wrong, which if for all the perfectionists out there, you cannot do yoga nidra wrong. Your subconscious is going to take what it needs from the practice every single time you do it. And even if you were to fall asleep, that is not the goal. But even if you did, you still receive the benefits. So there's absolutely no way you can do it wrong. So that's a great place to start for someone who thinks, I can't. You can just find a starting point and a place to begin, and know that it doesn't have to look the same whenever you meditate. There are lots of different variations that you can do. You can do guided meditations and chakra meditations. I do a lot of chakra meditations personally because I find as I'm just so aware of how working with the energetic body is so beneficial to you, when you're feeling out of balance. It's just the way to come back into balance and just to come back into alignment. And so I love working with the chakras. And I was like, oh, yes, I love this. This is what I needed in my life.
Right. So they can do guided meditation. Chakra meditation is also guided, or they do it. They can do it on their own. How do you prefer?
And initially, probably you would need to be guided. But then once you learn about the chakras, you could do that for yourself. And you would be aware, say, to work with your throat chakra, if you notice that your voice is getting raspy or you're beginning to lose it or it's sore, you begin to be mindful and aware, and you can see things in your body. And it's like, that's out of balance because it's not operating in its optimal state. So bringing it back into a balance. And before you say got laryngitis or anything like that, you can course correct so much quicker.
Right. Actually, I would like to move the topic to something which a lot of women face. This is about age. So, a lot of time women are told that just have a baby as soon as possible, then your biological clock will click and you would not be able to have that baby. So, for them, uh, how true is that? And how can they ensure that even they have a baby even if at a later age?
Definitely. Anything is possible. And just because something is said doesn't mean it's set in stone. I know people who are 50 who have had a baby. Yes, they used IVF, but they still had a baby at 50. And most people wouldn't even say that's even possible, right? So, and I had my youngest at 36, and I was deemed a geriatric pregnancy, yet I felt healthier the whole entire pregnancy than I did the first time around, and went from having a C-section the first time around to delivering naturally. And just noticing all of these benefits because of all the yoga, I knew how to breathe, and I knew how to, my hips were open from all of the yoga I had been doing. So it was that much easier to birth a baby naturally. it's not just to help you have a baby. These are things that you can use and implement ever after and have them for the rest of your life. I mean, I had written all of these, yoga practice to do after the baby came if I did have a C-section again, which wasn't the case. But, I was prepared for everything because you never know. But at the same time, I knew that I never wanted to have a C-section again. And I was hiking when my water broke because I wanted that baby to come out naturally.
So a lot of misconceptions are also about C-sec versus natural birthing. So why did you prefer natural birthing over C-sec? What difference does it make to the body?
A C-section is surgery to the body. It's a cut across your abdomen. And being a new mom with 2 babies, trying to feed them, change them, and bath them, when every time you bent over, you don't realize how much you use your core, your abdomen in everything you do until you're in that place. And it just was very difficult for me and very challenging, to be able to meet their needs all the time in the way I wanted. Because when my twins were on separate floors in the hospital, and I wanted to go and see my son because he was on a separate floor to me, and I went to get out of bed and I almost fell over. I was in so much pain, and I was not prepared for that. I hadn't experienced that kind of a surgery before. So, and you need to use extreme sort of care and caution for the first 6 weeks so that you can heal and so that you don't have scarring, and, so things don't rupture. And so to have a baby naturally, I was at Baby and Me yoga 10 days later. It was completely different, completely different, a complete shift. And it was mindset as well, and knowing I was capable and competent.
So I hear that mindset played a very, very major role, and that helped you even having the natural birth the second time. Because I often hear people saying that if the first time it's C-sec, it's impossible to have normal birthing the second time. But as you're sharing your experience, like you made a lifestyle shift and you included this natural practices, and then you had this natural birth. So how did you make that shift in your mindset? What was the biggest shift that happened?
I feel that even though when I was trying to conceive the twins, as soon as I held my niece in my arms for the first time, and I had been trying for so long and hadn't yet gone to the fertility clinic, that is why I feel I was blessed with twins, was because in that moment, I was bound and determined that I would do everything possible to make this happen for myself. And so even though I didn't have mindset experience at that time, internally we know so many things if we just tune in and listen, and, are guided by our intuition, which we oftentimes dismiss or think it isn't relevant or don't give any weight to it. And, not only was I able to birth babies, but I was able to birth a business, and I'm able to birth so many things because it just led to fertility in so many ways. And I know in my mindset, meditation helped so much the second time around, because I was able to see habits and patterns and limiting beliefs and things that didn't serve me, because you create this space where you can observe your thoughts and see what is showing up for you and see why it's showing up for you, and then begin to choose a different, better path. Because otherwise, you're always in your thinking mind, sort of overanalyzing everything and not having any stillness or inquiry inwards.
So you looked within to get the answers. And did you also consult it to some mentors or coaches who helped you in this journey?
Absolutely. All of my my trainings were done locally, but they were with a former monk from India. So I feel like I got very true and transformational and life-changing training. And it wasn't just knowledge given to you and you walked away. It was, how are you applying this knowledge? How are you using this? How is this showing up in your life? What does that mean? You weren't just left, looking at a book and then walking away, or just learning some poses and then walking away with a certificate. It was very internal and very self-inquiry, and so much needed, and it was what I was seeking. And when the teacher appears when you are ready, and I was so ready, and I'm so grateful to this day that they came into my life, and that I was able to shift my life. It's on you to kind of do the work, but at the same time, it is the most rewarding work, and it's your life. So, live your best life and make your life what you want it to be.
So a lot of people in the Western world, even in India, they feel that why do I need a coach or a mentor to for my mindset or whatever shift we make in our life? Without experiencing it, they have a lot of doubt. And even if you, I'm living in Dubai currently, so I meet a lot of people from Europe and US, and I see many people still think I cannot meditate, or it's not for me, I cannot do visualization, and all this is like some scam. So how do you explain to them about the importance of having coaches and learning to make this shift in your life?
I think the biggest shift to make is to prioritize yourself. And if you would have gotten where you wanted to be, you would be there already. And I know from my own personal experience, when I was trying to conceive my twins, I was trying to help myself, but I wasn't in a place to be able to help myself. So I'll share a little bit more by saying I would go to the bookstore and I would buy books, like what to expect when you're not expecting. And I would buy workbooks and I would buy things, and I would go home and look at them and I would read them. And I never wrote a word in that workbook because I was in denial. And as much as I wanted to help myself, I couldn't help myself. So the intention was there, but sometimes we need someone to hold our hand, to keep us accountable, to allow us to be vulnerable and show up however we show up, and to know that that's okay. Because oftentimes, and that's another teaching of yoga, is, nothing is good or bad, it just is. And to find acceptance and peace with that versus resistance. And the first time around, I was so full of resistance. I wanted to be pregnant. I didn't want to be experiencing any of these other things I was experiencing. So there is wisdom in that. And as well, the only thing I knew in my 20s to do was to go and see a psychologist counselor. And so I did, but he was a male who was near retirement, and I never said a word about it because I didn't feel like he would understand me or what I was saying. So finding a coach that you resonate with, or someone who can help you, who has been in those shoes, who can empathize with you and know what it is that you're going through, is going to help you to feel seen, heard, and validated, instead of feeling like you're broken, because you're not.
Yeah, I heard that all the time. Like people say that, please just tell me my mind is not broken. I'm not broken, because the society somewhere has across the globe, it has shaped people in such a way that if they are prioritizing self, it is like they are got labeled as mean. And if they are trying to find help related to mindset specifically, they can be labeled like they are feared, they are scared they will be labeled as someone with a mindset issue or not normal. So because of those labels, people are so scared to just think of themselves, prioritizing themselves, and even asking for help.
That is one of my biggest learnings, is that it's not weak to ask for help. It doesn't make you any less worthy or deserving or anything like that. And I thought, if I ever showed that I couldn't do it myself, that I was weak, or if I needed support, that I was weak. But instead, it is the opposite, and acknowledging we all have blind spots, we all have areas that we need help with, that someone can elevate and uplift us to. So you're not alone where you are, but there are other people out there who are more than willing to help you.
Yeah, I hope people start taking help more often and not see it as a weakness. Um, Ashley, what about women who are having some issues like PCOS, PCOD, and they are often told that it would be very difficult for you to conceive, so they get on pills. And personally, I feel that those pills would somewhere do more damage than help them in the long run, because then you become dependent on those pills. What is your take on it, and how they can have a baby naturally, uh, even with these issues?
Of course, every person I work with is individual and their circumstances are unique, whether it's PCOS or endometriosis or failed cycles of IVF, or people could have had ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, secondary infertility. It's all taken into account, but it's also a holistic approach, is getting to the root of the cause and not just giving a pill to sort of short, band-aid over it type of, in a way. I did manage to have children, but it took years. And I felt, not that I felt no better off, but emotionally, physically, spiritually, I didn't. I felt drained, and I felt like I wasn't, my energy was not what I wanted it to be. Whereas the other way around, I had all these tools and resources to help myself no matter what. I was anchored and grounded and centered in my own inner knowing that I could handle whatever comes my way. And previously, I didn't feel that. And infertility made me lose my faith and trust in my body, that I could conceive, that this was possible on my own. And getting on my mat and being mindful, I really built up my trust and my faith in myself again on my mat, to take that off of my mat into every other part of my life. So I think that is a huge part of infertility as well, is that the trust within your body becomes damaged and it needs to be worked on, and it can't be ignored or passed over. You need to work with your body, not against it. And there was a huge disconnect between my mind and my body the first time around. So I wasn't a spiritual person before yoga and meditation came into my life. And that really, made me know that there is a higher power and a universal consciousness, and that I am divinely guided and supported in everything I do, and to trust that everything is happening in divine timing. Whereas before, I wanted to control everything and I wanted to know. Whereas now I just know that everything is as it should be. And to find peace with that, because there's really nothing else to do. I mean, you can resist it all you want, but it's not serving you, and it's not helping you, and it's not helping you achieve your goals.
Actually, when I'm speaking to a lot of spiritual people, they are always saying that be let things happen in divine time, like you mentioned, and let it come to you rather than you chasing it. But when a person who has not done that much work, and maybe that level of enlightenment we have not reached, so it becomes difficult not to have those targets, not to hustle, not to get things quickly, like get impatient when things are not happening. So as a person who is not at that level of spirituality yet, and they are like in the zone of suffering, what can they do to move to the next step and let things happen? Because sometimes the wait can make them impatient.
Oh, definitely. The wait is is very impatient time, and that's sort of why I provide this energy medicine to take you through this so that you're not just spinning endlessly with these thoughts, and to be able to shift from that and to not be stuck there and to not, sit in your suffering, because it can be hard to work your way out of there, and to just take a higher bird's angle sort of view of your life and everything you do have in this moment to be grateful for, instead of focusing what you don't have, which is precisely what I was doing the first time around. It was like, I want this and I don't have it. But anyone who's worked with like the law of attraction or anything of like that's not how we bring things into our life, right? We can't force things into being, and truly just surrendering is truly what brought life back into me and into my body as well, because for the longest time that's precisely what I was trying to do, was to force and make things happen. And when I did conceive my twins, it wasn't through a very active time. I had left the fertility clinic. They had said it should have worked by now. This didn't work. We're going to be trying this next. And I felt defeated and deflated, but also the pressure was off. So that is when I actually conceived, was not when I was trying so hard and doing things so scientifically and so regimented and so precise and exact, and don't miss a beat, because otherwise it's not going to happen. But that's when it did happen.
So you surrendered, and somewhere you kept on doing the work that was required, like get the medicines, everything, and still you were not desperate to have it. You were thinking like, okay, let me just surrender and let things happen.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of life's greatest lessons that just keeps showing up for me, is you can't force things into being. You're pushing them further and further away from you, even though you think that's the way to make it happen. It's just energetically, it's pushing it away from you. It's just keeping it out of reach. And if you just, and that's also one of the things that is so commonly said that really gets under my skin, is that, well, just relax and you'll get pregnant. Yes, that is partly true. But if you don't know how to relax your nervous system, then you're not relaxed. It's not going to the spa and it's not going to a bubble bath. You really need to work with your parasympathetic nervous system to get out of fight or flight mode and into rest and digest mode, because in rest and digest mode, that is where the healing happens, the regeneration and the restoration in your body. So that is where you are truly nourishing yourself. And we need to be nourishing all of us, not just a piece or a part of us.
Ashley, and yeah, a lot of people today are living in fight and flight throughout the day. So when it comes to like getting off that mode, for some people it becomes really difficult. So how do you help them if somebody wants your help or support? How can they reach you? How do you help them and support them in their journey?
We have a discussion, and my work is one-to-one. It is customized because I truly feel everyone is unique. Their experience, their fertility journey is unique, and to meet them where they're at and to co-create, this program that works for them, their constitution, and their mind and body and spirit to help them along the way. I can't promise a baby, but I can promise that you are going to be doing everything possible to make this happen and make this a reality for yourself.
Yeah, so your details I will be sharing on my YouTube and my podcast in the comment section. So anybody who wants to reach Ashley, they can reach her anytime. Before we move towards the end, I have one question regarding secondary infertility, something we haven't discussed yet. So you talked about many women believe that there is no uh, problem once you have given birth once, there will be not a problem in the second childbirth, but there is secondary infertility is a reality. So what happens here and how they can change it?
So personally, I was surprised how many people were coming to me with this issue, and to realize how prevalent that is in our society as well. And it's, bringing this awareness that there are so many things that you can do for yourself, and that you can take your health and your healing and your happiness into your own hands. And if you've had one, it is absolutely possible for you to have another one. Everything is working because you've already produced fruit. You've already birthed a child. So it's really just turning inwards and seeing where we can make a shift to make that a reality and a possibility again. Because if you have produced a child already and you've already birthed a child, there is absolutely no medical reason. I'm not a doctor, but everything is working. Everything is, unless something happens after the first, time unless you've had your tubes tied, then everything is in working order. So there shouldn't be a need to go to a fertility clinic because you've already had a baby.
So they need to make the shifts that, as you mentioned, using yoga, Ayurveda, and meditation, and you teach them the same.
Yes, absolutely. And, if anyone is seeking support, they're welcome to join the Holistic Fertility Coach Facebook group to be surrounded by women who are in the same place as them, and to know that you're not alone, because it can be a lonely journey. I've been there, but I also didn't help myself because I didn't share with anyone and I didn't talk about it with anyone. And, speaking your truth and acknowledging where you're at in the moment is part of the process as well. Because I know for myself, denial definitely didn't serve me either, and finally, you have to face your fear and look at it and, not let your fear become you.
I think what you are saying is in itself a big topics of discussion. Not let your fears become you, and speak your truth. I think that is in itself a big journey everybody needs to take, because so many times we put, like as we are growing, we put on so many masks that speaking our truth requires a lot of digging and removing those masks and those fears of being judged, of being secluded. Those fears rule us, and I think that is a journey in itself that people need to take. So Ashley, I think thank you so much for sharing all this information, whatever your own journey in depth, and I really appreciate you. I hope our audience would also learn something and enjoy a conversation. And let us know in the comment box how was the conversation for you. If you have any questions, put it in the chat box, and we hope to get you the answers. I would redirect those questions to Ashley, and she would answer it. Will that be okay, Ashley?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I my heart breaks for every single woman who is just wanting to have a child so badly, because I know what that feels like. And, I want to help them to get there. And if for any reason that's not possible, then to have peace with that process, right? To, or to look and explore other options, because I think as a woman, we're all mothers already in so many ways, whether or not we produce a child ourselves, and that's to be acknowledged too. I mean, that is just a part of our human nature, that's our divine feminine energy, and it's there. Tap into it.
Yes, everyone, do listen to this podcast. If you have listened to it, do write in the comment box. If you have any questions, write it there. And as Ashley said, it's your story, and be at peace. Whatever the situation is, being at peace is extremely, extremely important. So thank you so much, Ashley, and I'll meet you next week with another amazing guest on Coaches on the Couch. So thank you so much. Keep smiling and keep shining, everyone. Bye bye.